speaking too fast or unclear or whatever. So we'll be talking about the Teams call, team project call, what will be the content of this session. There has been a session done by VLIR UOS, I think about 10 days ago in Brussels. We try to focus more on some practical tips, some advice to really write your proposal and increase your chances of success. So it should be complementary to what VLIR UOS has been talking, was more like explaining the call and how it works and when you're eligible and not, etc. But we want to also give a lot of tips about writing a good competitive proposal. So the topics today, the support that we're providing from KU Leuven and that you can make use of. I'll explain a bit about that. Then briefly the call basics. It's, of course, you are very much advised to read call document, but we'll quickly go through it because there are always some kind of questions and exceptions, and then you're welcome to ask them. And the broader vision that VLIR UOS has with these kinds of projects. That will lead us to the formats for this call. It's a call for concept notes that are relatively short now. There are not too many formats, but we'll go into them in a bit more of detail, going over the questions and giving some advice on what you can put where and what you shouldn't forget, etc. And the selection criteria that the jury will use to evaluate your proposal. Then very briefly on the online tool for the project proposals, so where we'll have to upload the proposal to submit it to VLIR UOS. And then there's still some room for questions. All right, are we good to go, Tupac? We're good to go. Here we go then. First of all, the most beautiful slide in the entire presentation. I present you our team, and you will see there you have the names and the email addresses. Caroline, who will be following up and providing support to all proposals from the Universities of Applied Sciences and Arts, and you see them over there. So if you're working with any of them, you can always contact Caroline for any of the countries involved. Then you have our colleague Piet Wostin, will be supporting proposals for Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Tanzania. For myself, Benin, Ethiopia, Morocco, Uganda, South Africa. So if you haven't any contact yet, you can email to these addresses. Laurens for Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi. Tupac for Ecuador, Peru, Cuba, Bolivia, and Kenya. And then we have Isadora, who will be helping us out because we are expecting quite a lot of concept notes. And so we try to keep the balance for every colleague by passing some of the proposals to her, but without knowing yet what countries she will follow. But you're in good hands, to be sure, in any country. Okay, click. One more thing, in case, I don't know, for the people present here, if you would still need any support for finding a partner, a professor at KU Leuven, or maybe in one of our partner countries. I've put a little link there that goes to a document with a lot of other little links for KU Leuven and also for the Universities of Applied Sciences and Arts to find people. But in the first place, I think it's good to contact the people that I've just shown in our team, the ICOs, we call them. It's good to ask them as well because we know a little bit who is active where and what they're interested in. But I also want to say that if at this point you don't have a contact yet, it's also already quite difficult. You might be lucky to find someone who is willing and motivated and has the confidence to start on such a journey, let's say. But ideally, you already have, you already know each other, you have already talked about your ideas. But yeah, then you know that there is a possibility. I will, of course, also share, because there will be several links in this presentation. I will share it with everybody afterwards. Okay. Then I think one final element of support that can be very valuable feedback is from our reading committee. That is, so we, the ICOS, our team, we read your proposals. You send us a draft, we read it and give comment. You send us another, maybe we'll comment again. Any questions are welcome. But we also have some professors who are willing to read some proposals, professors that have some experience in VLIR UOS project writing and project execution. And it might be very useful to also share your drafts with them through us then. The external deadline for VLIR UOS is the 8th of December, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Belgian time. But we're using an internal deadline. It is for the reading committee. Let's consider this as a very hard deadline. It's we don't want to bother them in the last few days, still expecting feedback. For us, for the ICOS, let's say the general message is, please send us what you have as soon as possible. We can have more impact, we can give better feedback that you can still use the sooner we get it. And this internal deadline is good to aim at, or even, let's say, ideally, we have a discussion when you're starting to think about a project, because then you can still give a lot of very useful ideas and comments. But try to aim at this internal deadline for a first draft that's 2 weeks before the final deadline. That doesn't mean that we won't be helping anyone who shows up after that deadline, but especially knowing that you're working on something, please don't hesitate and make contact with us. Okay. If there are any questions about that very first brief part, please. No? Okay, then have a look at the call basics. Perhaps it's already very clear to everybody, but good to repeat. These team projects are 5-year projects. If your proposal is selected, you will start on the 1st of September 2024. I will, in the next slide, show a bit the steps that are still following after this one. The budget can be normally up to 280,000 euros for those 5 years. It could be 300,000 in case you have a strong argument, a strong case of a multi-institutional, that means with several research or academic institutions, or multi-stakeholder projects, means that you're also working with non-academic actors. And you will see later on, it needs to be a very concrete, serious cooperation. These other institutions, these additional institutions or actors really need to take up a significant role and execute their own activities, etc. And then you can apply for these 20,000 additional, this budget. For a team project, what you need always, at least, is a partnership between one higher education institution in Flanders and one higher education institute or a national research institute in the partner country. So that's the basis. So if at this point you don't have a promoter in Flanders yet, or you don't have any one in the partner, then that's something to really work on, because it's necessary for the eligibility of your project. And then you can build on that with additional partners. And then I think the very essence of the team project, if you put it in one phrase, what you need within these 5 years is you need to obtain results that can convince this jury that your project can really make a difference out even of your university walls in the partner country, that it can contribute to change. And when they're talking about change, they're referring to sustainable development goals, contributing to sustainable and equitable development. That's at the top of the objectives of all VLIR UOS efforts, let's say. So that also means that for VLIR UOS, research and publications are fine, are great, but will not be sufficient to be selected as a team project. We need to go further, and we will talk about it a bit more later on in the presentation. If something about this is not clear for anyone, just please ask, because this is of course crucial already. Okay. Then the timeline. So the call was launched in beginning of October. The deadline for proposals is 8 December. Then they will be reviewed, and we hope to have the selection results in February. And then a new call will be launched for the proposals that have been selected. And you can start working on a fully fledged proposal. And then there will be a lot of additional elements. The idea for VLIR UOS is now, okay, let's say we expect a success rate of about 30% in this round. But then people haven't put too much effort in it. That's the idea. In the second round, they guarantee a success rate of 60%. So that's the idea. And then it's more effort. And they think, and they're expecting the deadline for the second round at the end of April 2024. So we know about the selection results, final selection results, 24th of June, and we can start the projects at the beginning of September 2024. Okay. Then when we talk about the VLIR UOS vision, this is a bit, it's in the call, it's their theory of change. That means that for them, what can a VLIR UOS project be should all be in that figure, in that theory of change. You can look at it a bit more in detail. Let me see how this presentation. Yeah, so this is at the top, just to say that in the end, all projects need to contribute to this sustainable and equitable development. What is perhaps more relevant for you now, that means that for them, projects work through these kinds of, they call it outcomes. That means at the end of your 5-year project, what has been created, or what will be in place, and they see let's see change becoming possible through individuals that have increased their skills, their capacities, their knowledge, and they become agents of change. So change really taking place through people always. That's the number one outcome. And they also see it happening through strengthening, reinforcing, building capacity at higher education and science institutions that can then function as drivers of change in their environment through one of these, let's say, pillars or pathways of change: higher quality and inclusive education, higher quality and needs-oriented research, or an institution can be strengthened through improved systems and processes and structures, and laboratories that have been upgraded, and all these kind of things, new policies within the institute. And then this number 5 that you see here, crucial, pivotal for all projects. That is what I was saying. You can have great research and your article and your new knowledge, but you need to make sure that this can have an impact on society. And then you will have to take action or find partners and allies that can help you do that. And that's what they call these enhanced conditions for uptake of new knowledge. It's also to say, okay, maybe it's not possible for you to directly create this impact in society within your 5 years, but at least create the conditions that it can happen afterwards, and make sure that, for example, we'll talk more about it later, but make sure that the research results that you have are translated to the people that need it, to the level of the people that are gonna have to use it afterwards, for example, or try to build the alliances or the partnerships that will be needed to create a change in society. And that's something that will need to be an integral part of your project, and that you'll have to think very, very hard about, because that's what will be selling the project to VLIR. So let's say an immediate level of their theory of change, and then the lowest level, if you want, is a level of the activities. Very concretely, what are you going to do? Workshops, research, field work, lab work, seminars, visits, all these kind of things, and they fit into these 6 domains. And it can be nice in the call, you have actually a list of possible types of activities that fall under these different domains. And I think we can be very confident that anything you can come up with in these type of projects can fit under one of these or several of these domains. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of freedom for you, but what they would like is when you explain your project, we will see it later, that you also explain where you link with their vision of change, that you say, okay, we're going to work on this improved research and creating conditions for uptake, and we want to do it this way, and that will work, that will have an impact. But we'll come to that later. There are 3 principles for VLIR that are transversal to this entire story that you need to keep in mind all the time. They come from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and they are the leaving no one behind principle of VLIR. This is very much about keeping in mind and focusing on more vulnerable and marginalized parts of society. It can really depend on the context, what that means. It also is about looking at gender, but both the situation of men and women. How does a certain challenge or problem affect them differently? Keep that in mind and show that you're sensitive for these kind of differences, because it's important for a proposal. It also means for them, leaving no one behind is also about maybe not working with the strongest possible university that you have in the country, but with the medium level that can still benefit a lot from a good cooperation and capacity strengthening there. Then the interconnectedness, sometimes perhaps a bit vague, but it's about, let's say, accepting and recognizing the complexity of the challenges that we have in front of us. So not presenting it as if, let's say, one simple solution will solve everything, but showing that you're sensitive to the relations between different challenges and problems, sustainable development goals that are related to each other, and as such also an invitation to work interdisciplinary or use complementary strengths in your team, but all the stakeholders you'll be working with. That leads us to the last part, the multi-stakeholder partnerships. As a principle, just accepting that challenges are too complex to do it on your own as one actor, especially academic actor. And so they refer to, let's say, 3 potential approaches. On the one hand, it is about being aware of what else is happening around you, who else is working on the problem, what are they doing, can you learn from them, can you work together with them to make sure that you're not, let's say, duplicating approaches or doing something that has already been tried and failed. Matter of efficiency as well. Then also what we said before, the multi-institutional partnerships, where you're working with several higher education institutions or research institutes, seen as a plus if you can really indicate where the complementary strengths are. And the third, multi-stakeholder partnership, really building an alliance of non-academic actors that you need to achieve this impact. And then also, we'll talk about it later, having a real strategy of working with them. It's not just about gathering the people, but also thinking about how are we going to work with them? How are we going to make this happen? And it's not that simple, and it takes time as well, but it can be very useful also for, let's say, the long term, the sustainability of your project and what happens after. Then having a group of stakeholders also very important. So just again to say that pivotal to this whole theory of change of VLIR, keep that in mind, to think about how are you going to make that jump from the academic work to the impact in society. And we'll give some examples and tips later on, but this is, let's say, also perhaps the big difference between a real scientific project that people are used to writing at the university and a VLIR team project. Okay. Yeah, briefly about the selection criteria that will be used. I've put this A, B, C, D there at the top. Why? Because the criteria will be scored with A, B, C, and D. And in case any one of them is scored with C or D, yeah, the project is already refused for further selection. It will not go through. So it's good to keep in mind that you need that quality all levels. And what are the selection criteria? At the first place, so I put them in order of priority for the selection committee. Relevance and coherence. So that's about, can you really demonstrate that what you're working on is a real need and is also considered by a real as a real need by the community that you're working in, by the context that you will be working in. And you can demonstrate this, of course, yeah, by writing a good context analysis, giving some figures, referring to national plans and guidelines, and really convincing the jury that this work is necessary more than other projects. Also the same for what you're doing. Is it relevant for the institution you're working with? Then the quality of the project design is, can you convince this jury that what you're gonna do is really gonna have an impact, that it will work? Is it logical? Does it make sense? Is it evidence-based, or do you yeah, base your assumptions on, let's say, earlier experience, on a very good knowledge of the context, and show that? Then the potential impact that it can have, I think, can be the difference between, do you expect to be helping 20 people or 200? If you want to, it's almost never possible to really compare it. But in case, yeah, a jury will look at that. Is this a project that is going to make a big difference, or is it really marginal? And also the sustainability. Can you convince them that this can work even after the project? If you're, let's say, you paid a salary of 20 people for 5 years, and then afterwards it's gone, it will be very hard to say that that the work will be kept up. And finally, the implementation setup, really practical. Does it make sense what you're going to do? Is there good planning? Do you have the right people on board to do this? Etc. It will not go that far yet at this point, because there's no budget yet that they will request. So it's more about what you're planning to do and how you're planning to do it, the activities, and explaining them and what will come out of them. Okay. Are there no questions about this? We're fine. All right. Very general tips. These are based on, let's say, our experience, but also on what we read in the feedback of the selection committee, because every project gets feedback, written feedback afterwards. Really keep in mind to, at some point, referring to, considering, reflecting on this gender equality. in different ways, both in, let's say, how you the composition of your team. Or if you're gonna have PhD students, how do you want to select them? Do you want to take into account certain balances? Good to mention. Also, of course, the topic of your project, but also the impact. You're working on a certain challenge. Are you going to keep track of how it will affect men and women differently? This can very often be the case, and you can, at this point in a concept note, you don't have any indicators yet, but later on, you can have an indicator that measures, let's say, the impact on men and on women, and it shows that you're sensitive to the differences that there could be. So keep that in mind. Environment as well. Not all projects will be working on anything that is very closely related to the environment, but still then try to demonstrate that you have the kind of do no harm philosophy in mind, that you avoid, let's say, plane travel that is not really necessary, that if you're using, let's say, very polluting substances, that you have a kind of policy to deal with it, and just show that you're sensitive to this transversal theme. Okay. When you are engaging in a multi-stakeholder cooperation, make sure that it is not just, let's say, for decoration, as saying we're working with these and these because they're well known, they have a good name, but they don't have a real role, or it's not clear what they're going to do. Then it will rather have a negative effect than a positive one. So if you work with people, make sure you know them and what you're going to do with them and how you're going to do that. And keep in mind here that you can have a bonus. You can request this additional budget if you have a very serious plan to work with them. Don't forget to refer to Agenda 2030, so the Sustainable Development Goals that you're working on. And let's see if this works if I click on it. The links between goals where it's possible. So there is a lot of material available online. Nothing happens when I click it. I'll click it again. Okay. Do you see this? No. Let me see. I will just share my screen then, make it easier. Up, there we go. Okay. So I clicked that link and you will see that we're here in Tanzania, the SDG on clean water and sanitation. And if I go down, these are all actions of the United Nations. You will see, okay, how it links to other sustainable development goals. And it's almost always the case that there are links. Now, I'm saying this because VLIR considers it important, and it is important, but we'll talk about it later. The space you have in the concept note is really limited. If you want to write a long story about all the links with all the sustainable development goals, you're going to waste your space on this. You'll really have to weigh what you want to talk about and what you don't want to talk about. But these kind of online resources can help you at least to reflect on it. Okay. And I'm going back to the presentation. You see that? Okay. Involving policymakers, we say it because if people don't do it, it will turn up in the selection committee comments. So think about it, like you will come up with results, with new knowledge that's applicable. You want this in a lot of cases to be used by local or national authorities. And if you want that to happen, if you want it to be realistic, keep in mind that you will have to involve them as soon as possible, like from the beginning. And then if you get to know each other, and we see it often, then even afterwards, these policymakers, because they very often need input, they need knowledge, and they will come back to you and ask in most contexts. So that's worth trying and keeping in mind. And then the last one, it's easy to say, difficult to do, but try to be as clear and concrete as possible. Vague proposals, or where people, selection committees, when they're annoyed, they will quickly put your proposal on the pile of not selected, not interested, because they have to read maybe 100 proposals, and try to make it easy for them as well. I will say this later again, but they're not experts in your field, so make it readable. If, let's say, if we can't understand it and we're used to something, then something will also need to change. They're not experts in your field. They're experts in, let's say, project writing and sustainable development, etc. But try to stay away from the technical jargon, or if you have to use the technical terms, explain them for really the average, let's say, educated person. If you can be evidence-based, it's always a plus. On the other hand, you won't have room to put in the references, and you don't have to do that either in this concept note. Some tips. Then I would like to have a look at the formats that we have to fill in now. There are only 2 documents, and they are short and relatively simple. But as we said, we'll have to think very well about it, because it's really about selling your proposal and using every word to do it. It will be a practice in balancing. So you have one Excel document that you need to use. It's for the team, and actually they're only asking for the promoters and co-promoters at this point. So very often there's a much broader team of people involved. Can be anything, lab technicians or members of external stakeholders, etc., etc. They don't need this information now, but the promoters and co-promoters, yes, and their role, and this is something that you'll need to explain well. And then the Word document for the narrative proposal, and that's what we're going to look at in detail now. What we always ask or advise is to keep working on these offline documents that you can share with us and with your partners by email, and only when it has been finalized, go to the online tool and upload it, because in the tool it's very difficult to give comments or to add things and work on it. So we keep working in the documents. All right. Then this narrative proposal. Some general points. Really mind these maximum characters that they, or characters that they are mentioning, and they include spaces, and sometimes there's even some formatting differences that you didn't expect. For that, it can be useful when you have a text to try and fit it in the tool online and see if it gets accepted, because we'll come back to that. You don't want to do that in the last 10 minutes before the deadline and having to adapt even 10 words in your proposal under pressure. So try not to exceed these characters. It will be a challenge, I think. The Word format is made up of 3 modules, apart from the general information. So you have the context or the problem analysis, project strategy, and then the organization of your team. If you use all the characters, it will be about 5 pages in total. So it's not that much. Yeah, and one question is optional. We will come to that. Of course, as we have very little space, try not to repeat information. Be very concrete. That works best. No vague terms or phrases. Say what you're really gonna do and why. And as I said, keep this committee in mind. You need to explain it the way you would explain it to a non-expert, so they can understand. All right. Then this first module, the context analysis, very important. everything's very important. It needs to be convincing. It needs to really grasp this jury members and say, okay, this is something. Yeah, this is really something needs to be done about this. This is really serious. This is relevant, and you start with that actually you start with the title and a good clear title, but then in the introduction to the context. And as I'm mentioning here, if you look at what they're asking you there, it is more than one question. You could even say there are 6 questions in there, and we should try to answer them all in a way. So it's both about, let's say, the sustainable challenges. That's about what sustainable development goals are we working on? What is the problem in the community? And the organizational challenges. Are there any weaknesses of the institutions we're working with that we need to work on? Any strengths? Then relating it to the context, what is already going on, what kind of laws or policies are there, what kind of things are making it easier or are making it worse. Same for the organizational context of the institution. As you will see in these team projects, it's very often a bit both working on, let's say, impact on the institution and impact outside. But in the theory of change, they consider working on the institution as a condition for working on the society and on the sustainable development goals. But you'll be thinking about both. And then aligning it with these SDGs. And in this context analysis, don't forget the 3 principles. Mention how you're thinking about vulnerable populations, gender relationships, equality. How do problems relate to one another, and what actors in society are very relevant will you need to be successful in this topic. So it all needs to go in these 2,000 characters. As I said, that's not even a page. So think about it very hard. It's, as we said here, teamwork. It's teamwork. A professor here in Leuven won't be able to write a good context analysis. You will really need each other and a good knowledge of the local situation. All right. I've put another link here. This is really nice. It's I hope it will work, of course. Dashboards, SDG dashboards, really nice to use in your context analysis, because for any country you will see how a country is doing there. And also you can click further and look at the indicators really in detail. So if you find something there that's relevant for your topic, use it in the context analysis is really great. Okay. It's very easy to find Google dashboard SDG and the country, and you'll just end up there. Okay. Don't forget to refer a bit to the, let's say, national policies or the framework, also the political framework from what laws, what plans are being put in place, why do they work or not work, and how can our project contribute there. But I'm making a mistake myself. What we very often see in the context analysis is that people start already explaining what they want to do about it, what solutions. Keep that for later. Use the space for a real picture of the situation and making it convincing as why it's so relevant what you're working on. And later you will say what you want to do about it. That's the next question. And don't lose space on it here. And then what I said, I don't forget this gender, the people involved, the environment, if relevant, put it there in 2,000 characters. All right, this slide, I won't go over it, but it's a kind of checklist for these guiding principles. You can have a look at it when you wrote your context analysis. Maybe have a look at this and say, okay, did I understand this well? Can I maybe add something? Can I go a bit deeper reading these questions? And it can be valuable. It's really an extra. It's a nice resource, but don't make too much out of it. Then I will quickly say something about module 2, and then maybe we'll take a 10 minutes break if that's fine for you. The project strategy. So this question, I think it's short, it's 1,500 characters, but it's the most important one in the concept note, because this is really where you're going to say, this is the impact we believe we are going to have. You have described a very relevant, pressing challenge in your analysis. Now, how are we going to make a difference there? How do we hope to do that? There also, they ask you to link up with this here, VLIR UOS, their view. Which ones of these outcomes are you gonna touch on? Refer to them and say how you will do it. For example, higher quality needs-oriented research, you will have perhaps some PhDs that will be working supported by a Flemish promoter, and this will have an impact because they will then afterwards share their skills and become professors, etc. But try to refer to their theory of change so they know that that it fits in there. Let me see, how do I go back? Yeah, and then the pivotal question: how will you creating these conditions for the uptake of your knowledge and your results? How will you be doing it? If you can put that in these in this question, that will be really great. But that's something to really think about. Also, the next question, I think the context analysis, you can write it. It may not need that much of your discussion. It comes from what you know, but the activities and the way you're gonna have an impact, that will be something to really talk about now. And then, if that's okay, I would like to take the 10 minutes and start again at 11, unless if there are any pressing questions now. No, we're fine. Okay, okay. So then we will be back in about 10 minutes. See you again then. I think the second part is shorter and at least some space for discussion and questions. Okay, see you later.